How you doing, folks? Hi, Chris. Everyone good? Excited? You made it in, the rain, the parking, the exodus of students. But anyways, we're going to get started. You know, some of you know me. I'm Chris Laverme. I'm the transition coordinator here at Greenwich High School. And I really appreciate everyone, parents, staff, you know, attending, registering for today. A couple of notes. First, I want to introduce Carlene Wood. So our representative, you know, it actually kind of supervises the high school special ed PPS from downtown Havemeyer. So Carlene, I don't know if you want to say hello.
Hi everyone, and I'm so glad to see so many parents here, especially some of our parents with students out of district. So it's nice that you all were here. Thank you for coming.
Great, thank you. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we move on. First off, as you can see, we're going to be video recording our presentation today. Now, Jason's going to focus on video recording the speakers, but what we ask is when we get to the question and answer time, please try to keep, you know, specific names of your children out of the discussion in terms of confidentiality and confidentiality purposes. We really would prefer that. I would really appreciate that. And we really appreciate Jason for coming and taking time to record today. And we're going to, what that means is, this will hopefully be posted on the high school website. So those of you that want to go back and take a look, or if you know someone that could not make it today, they will be able to access this information by watching the video online. A couple of other things. Staff members that are here so far, please make sure that you sign in. Whether your name is on the list or not, please make sure you sign in so that you get credit for attendance. And just curious, I know at this point, how many parents do we have? Just a quick raising hands. Okay, excellent. It's a great showing. Super, super. And as I said, some of our staff is going to be coming in the next 10-15 minutes. So we're just going to get started now and we're going to move on. We really have a great panel. How's that set up? It's great. We have, really, this is wonderful. It's a little bit of a coup to kind of have the 5 agencies and speakers from the 5 agencies come down to Greenwich all at the same time. So I'm really happy that you're here to take advantage of it. We're going to go through each agency. Each agency representative is going to have about 10 to 15 minutes to briefly explain who they are, the agency, eligibility, services, so on and so forth. We're going to hold questions until the last hour. The last hour, we'll open it up to questions. So please feel free just to write your questions down, and then we'll ask the questions when we get through each and every speaker. I know we have 5. There's going to be a ton of information. You know, some of it may be really exciting. Some of it, you know, it's your typical, you know, we're dealing with state agencies. So, you know, we're going to do the best we can, right? Sean, Brian, Kathleen. We have 4 state agencies, right? And Thalia. You're not. So you have all exciting things. You're still. Okay. So I'm going to say who's here, and then we're going to start. So first, I just want to introduce Mr. Sean Kennedy. He's a counselor with the Level Up program with the Department of Rehabilitation Services. Sean. We have Mr. Brian Smith, Assistant Manager of the West Region of the Department of Developmental Services. Brian. We have Mr. Luis Velasquez from Ableist Incorporated. He is the Senior Director of Day Services. And we have Miss Dr. Thalia Comninos. Good? Perfect. Okay. And she is the Intake Supervisor at the Southwest Connecticut Mental Health Services, Young Adult Services, also out of what is the F.S. Du Bois Center in Stamford. And then last, but certainly not least, we have Miss Kathleen Calway, Autism Support and Resource Specialist from the State Department of Social Services, Autism Spectrum Disorder Services. So we have really a fine panel here today. So we welcome them to Greenwich. You know, it's kind of a little joke, but I'll try it anyways. You know, I tried it on Carlene yesterday, it didn't work. You know, for those of you that follow, you know, the movies, the Godfather saga, you know, it's kind of like the 5 families, getting the 5 families together. So we got the 5 agencies together, and I'm looking forward to it. So without further hesitation, I'm going to invite Mr. Sean Kennedy to come up and speak on the Department of Rehab Services, the Level Up program. Sean, it's all yours.
I'm big on that.
So as Chris had said, my name is Sean, and I work for the Department of Rehabilitation Services. For some of you guys, you may have seen me. Some parents in here may have been working with me as well. To kind of start off, I like to kind of do the umbrella because there have been some changes in our agency in the past. So back a couple years ago, the Department of Rehabilitation Services was established. And so it's a state agency that provides services to individuals with disabilities. Prior to that, the agency that I work for, program that I work for, program is the Bureau of Rehab Services. We were always under DSS in the Department of Ed a while ago. But back when we started our new agency, we fell under the Department of Rehabilitation Services. So what the Bureau of Rehab Services is, it's a vocational rehabilitation service program for the state of Connecticut. There is 79 voc rehab programs in the United States. And the purpose of the voc rehab programs are to provide services to individuals with disabilities to help them prepare, obtain, and maintain employment. Back in 2014, 2015, because of new federal legislation under the Workforce Innovation Opportunities Act, or otherwise known as WIOA, we had to spend a certain amount of our budget on something called pre-employment transition services. So every single vocational rehab service program in the United States has to spend a certain amount of their budget on transition services. So in the state of Connecticut, we created a program called the Level Up program. So the umbrella really is Department of Rehabilitation Services. Under the Department of Rehab Services, there are a variety of different bureaus, one being the Bureau of Rehabilitation Services, the Bureau of Education Services for the blind, and there's a couple others. And under the Bureau of Rehab Services is a couple different programs, one of them the Level Up program, and that's why I'm here today. What the Level Up program is, it's really to provide services to individuals with disabilities, students who are between the ages of 16 to 21 while they're still in high school. The Level Up program, someone is eligible while they're in high school or under the auspices of the Board of Education. And what the role of the Level Up counselor is in the Level Up program is to provide the pre-employment transition services. And there are 4 or 5 core categories that we are mandated to provide and only can provide under the legislation. And I'll try to go through it, remember. The first one is job exploration, guidance and counseling around post-secondary education, work-based experiences such as job shadowing, informational interviewing, and depending on our budget every year, we do sometimes have a work program in the summer. Then we have introduction to self-advocacy and independent living, and then career readiness skills. So the program that we designed is that we have to provide all those 5 core services. And what our agency did is we came up with different programs to provide those services. One of the services that we have provided is something called the Career Assessment Services. And under the Career Assessment Services, it's working with them to find their career interests, and what falls under that is job shadowing, informational interviewing, getting the student out there in the community to really get a sense of what they're interested in. Other programs that we have designed within Level Up have been geared towards self-advocacy, workplace readiness, and so it's an opportunity for them, I like to say start early, talk often. about transition services, because that's very important. The conversation really should be starting early, both in the school and with our agency. And my role as the counselor is I work hand in hand with Chris, and Chris refers different students to me. And from that opportunity, I do an intake, get a sense if they should be with our services, and is it a good time to refer? Sometimes we say that we may want them closer to graduation, because if we get our program 16 to 21, but if we know someone is going to the age of 21 in the transition program, we say let's may hold off until the beginning of their transition program, because the services that I kind of talked about, the career assessment services, we can really only provide once. So it's not a yearly thing, it's really only being able to provide once. Now I'm going to go into kind of the eligibility process for our services. To be eligible, someone just has to be on an IEP, a 504 plan, or have a significant barrier to employment. So that's the criteria. So when Chris contacts me, he lets me know there's a student, I come and meet with them, do the referral, get all the information possible, and then my role is I really come once a month to meet with the students individually or in groups, to talk about career interests, learning about disability, and that's a big key thing for us. It's because our services are geared to individuals with disabilities. My main role is talking about disability and really what that means for the individual and for the student, and how that may affect them on a job, and really working with them to become as independent as possible, because we want to help them become independent, because the school isn't always going to be there. We want to help them, make those measurable skill gains, those milestones in their life, because again, the school, as I said, isn't going to always be there. The support from the school. So it's our role really to help them become as independent as possible. So that's kind of my role monthly. As I talked a little bit about ago, we provide those other programs. We contract out for those programs, such as the career assessment. We contract out. The vendor that I have working here is Goodwill. And Goodwill's responsibility is I refer the student to Goodwill, and they would go out and find the job shadowing experience for the individual, or the career interest inventories. And in the summer, we have our work experience. They develop the job sites for the individuals, and then they provide some support on the job, because our services are really to help prepare someone for competitive integrated employment. So when they do graduate, they can move on to get a job and be as independent as possible on a job, because our services will never be one-to-one job coaching 24/7 on a job. We really are here to help get them as independent on the job as possible, with some support or minimal support on a job. We like to have them wean off support. And unlike kind of other agencies, our agency is a short-term agency. So when someone is competitively employable after high school, after college, and they're satisfied with their job, they're happy, our services would start to wean off and we would close out a case. That being said, we can always reopen a case. Say a job changes or they need more training for a job. They can always come back and reapply. Say they may need more job coaching hours or an on-the-job training, because they need, the employer is asking them to do more, which is great, because that's what we want to see. So kind of overall, that is in a nutshell of the services that we provide. Again, we utilize the term for level up, any potentially eligible student for vocational rehabilitation services. And I don't want to go too much into adult services because it will start to confuse everyone. But once they do graduate, they are transitioned into our adult service program. And you have to apply for adult services. Having me as the counselor hopefully makes it more of an easier transition. And applying for adult services, what we look at for adult services, first we look at the disability. Secondly, then we look, can they benefit from the services? And thirdly, the functional limitations. How is the disability going to be a barrier to employment? So those are the three things that we look at for eligibility purposes for adults and the adult services. Again, I don't want to go too much into depth with it because we're here with the Level Up program, but for Level Up, it's all an IEP, 504 plan, or some type of significant barrier. I think we're feeding questions at the end. Okay.
Okay,
Sounds
good.
All right.
Thanks, Sean. Okay, just a couple of things before we move on, and Mr. Brian Smith is our next speaker, but a couple of things just to kind of piggyback on what Sean said. Just some things, some terms, terminology. Integrated competitive employment. And maybe you'll have a question about that when we get to the question and answer time. Integrated competitive employment. Time-limited services and independence. Super important terms and philosophies of the Department of Rehab Services. So, when we get to the question and answer, you may have a question or two about those terms relating to doors. So, next up, without further hesitation, Mr. Brian Smith, Assistant Manager, West Region, DDS. Come on up, Brian.
A little intro there.
Well,
I apologize to the kids on the camera. I'm going to move around. I can't stand behind the podium. I can't do that. So I'm going to go slow so you can follow me around. As Chris mentioned, my name is Brian Smith. I'm actually an Assistant Regional Director, but that's okay. It's all good. Somebody promoted me last week and called me the Regional Director. I still haven't seen that in my pay, but that's all right. I'm based here in the West Region. DDS is 3 regions statewide, West, North, and South. Divides the state equally into thirds. My office is currently based in Waterbury, but obviously I get around a lot, and I'm in Cheshire, Danbury, Norwalk, Stratford, Torrington, wherever the needs are, that's where I end up. Email is there. Feel free to email me any questions that you come up with after you're on your way home tonight or tomorrow. I will get back to you by email faster than phone, I will be honest with you, because I have the phones there. I can do that from the road. What I'm going to do today is just quickly talk about, there we go, perfect. How to apply for DDS services, what does eligibility look like if I'm made eligible, what types of services can I expect, briefly touch base real quick on how we collaborate with other state agencies as well. So here we go. So this is what our website currently looks like. As we speak today, the revolving pictures may change, but overall this is the format. You will see on this button right here on our website, nice little orange yellow button says eligibility. If you click on that, it will bring you to another screen to which you can choose to apply for somebody. There we go. You have an option to apply for somebody under the age of 3, birth to 3 services. We have a lot of youth who come out of birth to 3 programs, and they, as part of their discharge plan from those services, they go and apply for DDS services. Number 2 is applying for somebody with intellectual disability. Number 3 is applying for somebody with autism or no intellectual disability. And 4 is applying for somebody who used to be with us, disengaged services, and wants to reopen. When I started about 16 and a half years ago working for DDS, you couldn't do this. You had to make a phone call, give your name, your phone number, your address, and they mailed you the application. The legislature insisted we keep track on how many applications went out the door, how many came back. Those days are over. You can go online, click on that, and it produces the application options for you. If you want to click on the second button, the second bullet down for me, that would be great. Thank you. Yep, perfect. This screen will tell you eligibility fact sheet. The application is in English and in Spanish. Okay. There is information you can ask by doing an email. Every single application for DDS goes to Hartford. That's where our eligibility unit is housed. I believe currently there's 3 to 4 staff who are in that unit. So the more complete the application is, the faster it gets through the pipeline, because there's not a lot of eyes and hands processing those applications. The application itself is about 3 pages long, though when you print it out, it's more. There's some releases of information, instructions, and things like that that go into it, but all in all, it's only about 2.5 to 3 pages in length. The bulk of the materials you're going to be submitting is going to be records that you have of your family member. I did provide one of these eligibility requirements, check sheets. When you open up the application, there's going to be a checklist. That's the first page on the application. This gives you a little more detail. It's a type of tests that we're looking for. Please don't panic. It does have a massive list of cognitive tests. We don't want one of everything. These are the types that our psychologists were looking for when people are applying for services, to give you an idea that if you don't have one, this would be an appropriate cognitive test that would be accepted by our eligibility unit. So you don't have to have one of all of them, and same rules apply with adaptive tests as well as tests on autism, which I'll allow Kathy to talk about. Most of your records are going to come from your doctor's offices that you have for your family member, and the school system. So all the school system professionals in the room, please help families out as much as you can. IEPs, PTOT speech, and any of the cognitive tests done at the triennials. Make a nice little package for the families seeking assistance. That would be most helpful. For the families in the room, please make a copy of everything you sent to us as far as your application is concerned. 2 reasons. Reason number 1, doesn't happen a lot, but just in case it gets lost in the mail, you have a copy and can resubmit another copy. More importantly, if you are denied eligibility, you have appeal rights. So you will be able to read that letter of denial, identify what they had indicated as to why they denied, and look at what you gave us and see if there's things missing that you should have submitted and didn't by chance, or go out and get those additional tests done. So it gives you an idea so you can cross-reference of what you gave us versus the denial letter. Start to finish. If you mailed it today, you're looking anywhere around 2 to 3 months on average. Might move a little faster depending on the flow of applications coming into that unit. It will depend on how complete that application is that you get an answer as well. Core things about eligibility. For DDS services, you're looking, an individual must have an IQ of 69 or lower, so falling within the realm of intellectually disabled, with deficits in adaptive behavior as well. Okay, that's why the third option up there was somebody who has autism but does not have intellectual disability. That's where the line is. It's that IQ score is going to be the line in the sand. So we have a lot of young men and women who have the diagnosis of autism but also intellectual disability. Their IQs fall in the 60s or the 50s or even the 40s. They would be under DDS side of supports and services. But for those young men and women who might be falling into the 80s or 90s of IQ, they would not fall under DDS, and we would be working with our colleagues at DSS under the autism program. Okay? So after you're made eligible, if you're in the West region, which you are, because you're Greenwich, your file would be sent to Cheshire. Okay? How do I get a case manager? Your son, daughter, family member, whomever it is, would need to have Medicaid, Title 19. But regardless, this brochure that's over there are a bunch of supports and services that you would have access to after being determined eligible for DDS services. It includes access to our respite centers. It includes access to family grants, some support staff like our transition advisors, our education advisor, our psychologists. We do have a part-time speech and an OT. We have nurses, and we have some behavioral support staff as well. We also have family support workers, which are residential workers who have left our residential settings, our group homes, our regional centers and have chosen to work in the community, they can be assigned to do some in-home services and community access services for families and individuals. Those are just a few of the different types of things that are in this brochure. Happy to answer questions during the Q&A time or via email. But as you go through this process of eligibility, you are notified by letter. As your file is shipped from Hartford to Cheshire, you are then notified by letter of who the contacts are. You will get one of these handy little brochures in the mail. So we keep trying to maintain that communication along the way. Key things, since we're in the high school setting, is everybody here high school, or we have other teachers, professionals, families that have younger kids?
Do we have any middle school representation? Any middle school teachers?
No? Okay.
Mostly
All
high
right.
school.
So there's information about transitioning, and as I mentioned, we have a transition advisor currently, and I'm hiring 2 additional ones as we speak, just waiting for all the HR stuff. So we're going to have one housed in Danbury, one in Stratford, and one in Cheshire. Greenwich will be served out of the Stratford office. But we work in collaboration with DOORS, Sean's agency, a lot. I actually meet with the district director of DOORS every single month to review all the youth coming out in June. And then we'll start looking at next June, and then the June after. Why is that? We are promoting employment. Whatever you can do as families, whatever you can do as school professionals to push employment, regardless of what their abilities are or needs are. Everybody has an opportunity to strive for a meaningful job in their community. But we look at that. We want to make sure that that agency is doing what they should be doing. And we're doing what we're doing. But eventually, as Sean mentioned, they're going to fade away. And if our agency is engaged with that same youth, we're planning for them for those supports that may help them maintain that job. If they lose a job, we call up the Seans of the world and say, hey, Brian lost his job, we need to reactivate the case. And we go back and forth depending on how that person's career path goes. Okay, but we are in constant communication with respect to all the grads. The good news is I was in a meeting in Waterbury this morning before coming here, and I challenged my commissioner as to the status of funding for grads coming out this June. And he basically said the budget reads as though there will be funding for the grads coming out in June. That's good news.
Can you say that again?
As of this morning's message I got from the commissioner, there is money in the budget for graduates who are exiting Greenwich High School in June for services that commence after July 1st.
That's amazing.
That's
All right.
wonderful.
That's huge. And I say that, I like that good news. You know.
No, good news.
I got the little
Like-
chills. Last year's graduates who exited in June we did not get alerted that there was funding in the budget, and we all know why. There was no state budget. So we were operating without a state budget. We couldn't start anything brand new because we were working on a month-to-month disbursement from Hartford. Those graduates last year did not get money, access $2 to start employment services or a day service like an agency that Lewis represents until November, around Thanksgiving. Okay, so they were out of school, June whatever was your last day, until we started making phone calls right around the Thanksgiving mark that funding was released, we could start planning and getting things going. And the agencies like Ableist, the agencies like Goodwill that Sean mentioned, or Marrakesh, or Star, or Clasp, or whoever you're working with, you don't call them up one day and say, hey, I got money, let's start tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. It takes 2 or 3 weeks to get things in place. So even though I can send a message that we have funding available, and that grad can start, it takes a 2 to 3 week, maybe even 4 weeks for some to get things and literally have them walk through that door. Would you agree, Louis?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. I wanted to say that, I saw that now. A lot of it has to do with transportation, coordinating transportation, and a lot of it also has to do with staffing. Hiring staff. You need extra staff in the program. Or it might mean developing a new program. A lot of our providers are starting to do that as well to meet the needs of the newer populations coming out of the school districts. So, so we constantly are working in collaboration with DOORS about the employment. We realize not everybody's going to land a job when they leave school. But if you are going to land a job, we are committed to maintaining that job. So we will get money out the door to help those job coaches stay in play for those youth who have employment before and upon exiting school. Okay, we will work with each and every one of those teams on that. For those who employment currently is not the immediate pathway, there's plenty of other service options that our case management staff will be happy to work with each of those families with. And finding providers like Ableist or whomever in your community that you want to access. So on average, just so you know, we have about 300 to 400 graduates every single year statewide. Doesn't seem like a large number, but that is funding that we're asking for each and every year in our state budget. So we are advocating every year for new dollars for that new grad population every single June. It's an easy target when they're looking at cutting budgets. So I was very excited when I challenged my commissioner this morning to get an answer out of him, and when he said that, I'm like, thank you. I don't have to live last summer like I did. None of our families have to go through that other families had to go through. So, but feel free, email me any specific questions that we don't get to later. Am I good on time?
About 3 to 4 minutes.
Oh, wow. For me? That never happens. It's kind of stunned. So feel free to take those materials. We do have offices in Norwalk at our regional center campus. We have an office in Danbury on Main Street. We have an office in Torrington at our regional center campus. We have our head office for our regions in Waterbury, which is what I'm based out of. And we do have another office in Stratford at that campus. And we also have an office in Cheshire. So that's our regional offices. This area is served out of Stratford. So any case management services would come out of that office, actually Norwalk, Norwalk and Stratford, depending on our caseloads. So all your case management needs would be dealt out of there. We do have a respite center in Norwalk. So for families who are interested in that service, that's the closest respite center program for that. We also do have the big Southbury Training School in the region, but that is actually its own separate entity. We don't get engaged with that, but we do access some of their services. We do also have 2 dental clinics in our campus, in our region. We have one in Stratford, and we have one in Southbury as well. So for families who have difficulty accessing dental services in your community, that's another option for those young men and women, is to tap into those clinics. It does take a little bit of a while scheduling wise, but it is a great resource available as well. So,
Brian, you just, maybe you mentioned it, maybe I missed it. Talk a little bit about the helpline.
Helpline. So that brochure there, as I mentioned, when you get through eligibility, file sent to Cheshire. Cheshire is where our helpline is located. If your family member does not have active Medicaid, Title 19, specifically Husky C, they will be serviced out of our helpline. On the back of that brochure is their email address, and on the back of that brochure is the phone number. It's toll-free. Toll-free in Connecticut. That's your point of contact for our department at that time. Okay, again, you'll get a notification via letter of all that information, but you have it right there already. They will guide you. If you don't have a case manager, you don't have a Brian in Norwalk, there's a Brian in Cheshire who's answering the phone and responding to your calls, making the referrals for services, or linking you with community resources. It's more of a reactive system to you calling or emailing than it is proactive of us reaching out and saying, hey, we haven't connected in a while, how is Brian doing? So feel free to call them, inquire. We might not be the one providing that service to you, but we might be able to make that linkage to something in your community or another state agency or a private provider or a family group. The Connecticut Family Support Network has resources down in this area as well. So that would be your point of contact. They're phenomenal. We currently have 2 staff. I'm waiting for my applicant pool on the 3rd staff, which I hope will be bilingual, because we desperately need Spanish-speaking staff on our helpline. So I'm hoping to hire that person, and they will also be targeting our transition age group. So working with families on the applications for guardianship, if it's appropriate, conservatorship, if it's appropriate, as well as your state, federal and state benefits, so that way we can get you moved into a local office and have that more direct contact with our agency. So, but rest assured, if you go through eligibility, if Brian goes through eligibility, is made eligible, regardless if you use us or not, we're planning for you. Okay, that's the one key piece. Whether you want to engage our agency or not, that's your choice. We're not stormtroopers. We're not going to pound down your door and say you must work with us. No, that's not how we operate. We are planning that. So Brian's name, Brian's date of birth, Brian has a DDS number. That's all in our system. Brian shows up on the list for graduating this coming June. Whether we've had conversations or not, we're planning for Brian leaving in June. based on a generic value, which tends to be projected high, so that way we're safe. But if you choose not to apply, that's your choice. We encourage you to apply. We encourage you to engage us. But if you apply, eligible, and you don't engage us, that's okay too. Rest assured, we are planning and we are advocating for resources. Okay?
That's super.
Can I help you?
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, appreciate that. I'm glad that the technology worked. I just want to shout out to, yes,
Can you turn on the lights?
turn on the lights. Is that good?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's good. Couple of things. First off, a big shout out in the booth. Celeste Vigilante is helping us with technology. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for helping us. Just a couple of points, again, as we kind of develop questions for the question and answer time with DDS. I think Brian, I stopped counting. I think he mentioned budget at least 8 times. Budget. I'm not sure. Darlene left, good. I'm not sure how often in PPTs that we talk about budget, which, you know, but with adult services, you're going to hear budget. Also, I heard Brian talk about employment as a focus, and I heard meaningful job in the community. So again, to help think about questions for when we get to the question and answer, I think those are some areas that are pretty darn important. Okay, moving on. Without further hesitation, to kind of our local agency right down here in Greenwich, that provides a lot of the direct service from DDS, and in past years actually BRS as well. I'm not sure if that's still. But we're going to have Mr. Luis Velasquez, and he is the Senior Director of Day Services with Ableist. Luis, come on up.
Hi, everybody. As Chris said, I'm here representing Ableist. Ableist is an organization that provides services and supports to individuals with developmental disabilities across the lifespan. Across the lifespan, meaning we have early intervention services, so we're working with families at the very, very beginning of a diagnosis, and we're supporting them through their entire lives. As part of our day supports, we have senior services as well for those folks who have gone through our employment program and who choose to retire. We have more therapeutic services set up for those folks. Our programs are divided into therapeutic services, which constitutes early intervention, customized therapies in the areas of speech, language, behavioral supports, and life services. And as I mentioned, I'm the senior director of the day program, so I'm directly in charge of our day hab program, which is more therapeutic based. Those folks need a little bit more supports. The focus isn't so much on the vocational, but the needs in the areas of therapies, different therapies. I'm also responsible for transitions, so we're working with school systems to get those young people from the school setting into adult services. Employment, just as it states, we're looking to get the folks that are supported by us into the community, working meaningful jobs in the areas that they have a passion for. And recreation and residential supports. We also have under our day supports our life skills program, and that's specifically geared towards the needs of the young people that are transitioning from school-based supports to adult services. Our life skills program is a community-based program, so it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's they're community-based sites, so they're not going to one big building where where all the supports are under one roof. It's a community-based site. So we have a site here in Greenwich at the First Presbyterian Church. We have a site in Stamford. We have a site in Westport. We have a site in Wilton. Those sites are specifically geared to address the needs of individuals in their own communities. And as part of the supports, we're helping young people with work. We're offering volunteer opportunities. We're offering skill development. We're offering behavioral supports. We're offering all the things that will help make a full life for these individuals in the community. Activities, very important. We have a very rich activities program. We have activities in different age groups that just run the gambit of activities. So we're talking about art, we're talking about music, we're physical activities, gym, men's groups that go to the gym and hang out, and so it helps create a full life for the individuals that we serve. So we're providing a day where they're engaged in meaningful work activities. We're helping them make connections with other folks in the community through our recreation programs, and we're also supporting folks in our residential services. At this point, I think we have about 35 different residential options. Those options include group homes, more traditional group homes, supported living, home shares. Home share is basically a setup where somebody without a disability is supporting somebody with a disability in a residence. Like I said, we're at about 34, 35 situations now. That continues to grow. We're going to have 2 more set up by the end of the year. So we're continually growing our program as the needs of the community increases. And we're spreading our footprint so that now we're providing support not just to the folks here in Greenwich, but we're providing support to folks in the new communities, Wilton and Westport, and we're bringing folks in from Ridgefield, from Norwalk, from Weston. We're really spreading out to really offer opportunities to everyone. Specifically for you folks here, for transition services, like I said, we're working very closely with schools to help prepare these young people to come to us and to be able to adapt to our program, because it's a very different setup. We're participating in PBT meetings. We're working with the schools and doing observations at work sites. We're having folks come to our program and access what we do. We set up a variety of models depending on the individual need. It's all very individualized. Our services are really geared to the specific needs of the individual. We try to do that for everybody. What else can I touch on? That's basically it. Like I said, we're continuing to grow. We're very excited about our expansion into Wilton and Westport, because that really expands our footprint and our ability to provide more enhanced, more comprehensive services to the individuals that we support. We work very closely with DDS. They license all of our homes. They license our day program and provide funding that allows these individuals to come to access our services. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, just a few things with ableists that I heard. Individual needs. Individual needs. I also heard meaningful work. I heard meaningful work in the community again. And of course, I think from way back when I actually worked with BRS years and years ago, ableists now, used to be pretty much a Greenwich-based. You sound like you are Fairfield County, throughout Fairfield County. So those are some major changes in their programming moving forward. So again, let's think about some of those things as we head towards our question and answer time. So next up, without further hesitation, Dr. Thalia Komninos, and she is the intake supervisor at the Southwest Connecticut Mental Health Services, specifically the Young Adult Service Program.
Yeah, I'll focus on young adult. Actually, I'm the supervisor for intake generally, and we have several programs, and one of them is the Young Adult Services. So I'll speak more to that, since that's the one that's relevant to this age group for the most part. So the Connecticut Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, state agency, there are 5 regions. We're in the Southwest Connecticut mental health system, and it's primarily in Bridgeport. There are 2 locations there, and I'm with the Du Bois Clinic, which is in Stamford. So our catchment area for the Du Bois Clinic is from Greenwich to Westport. And in the intake department, we'll sometimes be referring callers and people inquiring, potential clients, to other services in our community and local communities in our catchment area. So depending on what's available. But we have the Young Adult Service Program for the area, and it's often referred to as YAS, so that's what you'll hear, YAS, Young Adult Services, YAS. So for short, everybody calls it that. So the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services focuses on clients with major mental health problems, serious chronic problems, for the most part. The Young Adult Services has a little bit of a different shift, but it does focus on young adults who have some major mental health difficulty. And the eligibility for the Young Adult Services is that the client is between ages of 18 and 25. Generally, they're referred before 25. That's sort of the window within which the services are provided. It's sort of not a hard cutoff, but they do try to have the referrals be, up until somewhere until earlier mid-20s, so that the staff can work with the young adults for some period of time and really help them develop the skills to transition. Again, sort of one of those themes that comes across. And so the young adults who come into the program have usually a major mental health problem and are typically referred by the Department of Children and Families, but not necessarily so, even though that's most often the case. So they've been in the system. They're clients who've had some significant challenges and often a lot of trauma, often a lot of disruption in their lives. And so the Young Adult Service Program helps address the areas where they need help and the areas where they kind of are lagging behind for the various reasons, whatever was kind of challenging or missing in their developmental period. So the Young Adult Service Program focuses on a variety of areas, and it does this within a culture that's client-centered and trauma-informed. That applies also to the other programs at DEMAS. That's very much the culture that has been developed in recent years. And the client-centered approach, even for the young adult, means that the service providers work with them. What do they want? Where are they at? It's very collaborative. It's nothing sort of done to them. It's something that their engagement is really elicited. And the young adult team works very much to elicit that engagement, more so than it might in the other programs with the adult population, because they know that's what's needed at this point with the young adults. They don't necessarily have the sort of oomph and the motivation to just readily engage. So they really spend a lot of time on engagement, on eliciting, on encouraging. If the person doesn't engage that easily, they'll call a lot, they'll go out to the house. They're somewhat community-based, not strictly office-based. And it is a voluntary program, so the young adult has to want to some extent to, but it's all right if their interest grows after the initial engagement. They get increasingly engaged. It often takes the young adults some time to really recognize and accept that they have some significant mental health challenges. There's just a lot of frequently sort of a denial of that, a rejection of that, and not really accepting it. So that takes time, and that's understood where they're at. So the staff really meets them where they're at. And they do a very multimodal approach. There are clinical services, that's very important. They can come for therapy. They come for psychiatric evaluation and management, regular medication management. There's case management, and to help them, perhaps they need to get Husky insurance or Social Security benefits. So the staff help them with this, assist them to do the things to get what they need, and to have the support because they can't do it independently. They're still at that age where they're growing, they're developing, they need a lot of support, hand-holding to some extent. Really, they're at the age and the phase where they still need a lot of support and assistance, and kind of teaching to do these things, to develop these adult skills. So, and I just want to say one more thing about the trauma-informed approach, is a lot of the staff have very good, solid clinical training in trauma, and to understand the clients through that lens, since so many have experienced various kinds of trauma, and to understand their kind of emotional responses, their behavioral responses through the lens of trauma, so that they can have the best responses from staff and help them overcome what have been some of the obstacles that came to be because of perhaps traumatic experiences. So they are clinical services, there are case management services, and employment, we hear that, and all of the speakers have talked so much about employment, because employment is really a big part of the way that people integrate into the community and have meaningful lives. And so there's always emphasis on that and assisting the young adults to find an area of employment that also builds competency. So that also helps their sense of self, their mental health, to be able to feel competent and to do something in the world and to develop an income. So at the Young Adult Service Program, there's an embedded employment specialist. Some of the Young Adult Service Programs in the state have their own, that is a DEMIS employee. At the Du Bois Clinic, there's an employee from private not-for-profit, Marrakech, who's embedded on the team to help the young adults develop employment. There are some residential services in Bridgeport, not in Stamford, though for some young adults who've been in the YAS program in Stamford and that it was determined that they could benefit from, in fact, very much needed the residential services, some of those folks will then transfer up to Bridgeport, have the residential and the clinical and all of the other services there. It's a high level of service, a high level of contact provided, so the young adult has to be interested in doing that, and as I said, at least initially, and maybe more elicited and increase their engagement over time. So there's the therapy, there's the psychiatric medication management and ongoing evaluation, case management. There is a recovery support specialist embedded in the team at Du Bois Center and at some other YAS teams. And that's a person with a lived experience, so that often the client can really relate. They provide support. They come from their own learning curve. And so they can be particularly inspirational to clients. Most of the referrals, as I said, come from DCF, not necessarily. If someone wants to make a referral, they can call us directly, the intake team. There are some brochures there, but these are the statewide brochures. They give a lot of good information. The folks here are kind of the statewide people who do the administration and consultation. But if anyone wants to request services, they can call us directly, the Du Bois Center. Our number is 203-388-1600, and you ask for intake. We've gotten referrals from schools, from DCF, from child guidance, from self-referrals, family members, hospitals, if I didn't say that. So, and then we will do a screening in the call to the intake to the triage team, and kind of discuss what the needs are, and then if there's continuing to have space, we do have some space right now in the young adult program, we'll refer it. But the evaluation process at intake will also help us determine if the person is best suited for the young adult service team. You can be in the young adult age range, 18 to 25, still receive services from DEMIS, from Du Bois Clinic, or various other locations in DEMIS, but you don't have to be in the young adult service program. So if it's not, that's not the program, but someone does still need the services of DEMIS, they can be in the other programs. There are various other programs for adults. Themis serves 18 and over. The young adult program requires a lot of high level of participation. It offers frequent services. At Du Bois, they aim to have 3 or 4 contacts a week with the client. That doesn't mean they're all in person. They might be phone calls. One might be a psychiatric appointment. One might be the social worker. Another one might be the recovery support specialist or the case manager. But they aim for pretty intensive interactions to really help them through that developmental period to develop the skills that they need. Because it's a high level of interaction, young adults who are working in school may not have the time for that, actually, and then we're open only from 8 to 4:30, so it has to also be within that time frame. But the folks who are successfully in school and working are generally the people who have achieved what the Young Adult Service tries to help them achieve. So if they need our services, they'll go into the adult outpatient rather than Young Adult Services. So Young Adult Services aims to launch, to address their clinical needs, to do it in a collaborative, client-centered, trauma-informed way, and to help them develop the skills in kind of this safe environment with healthy, predictable attachments of the care providers, to help them get to the next phase and to help them in their educational progress or employment progress, and to the point where they can be as independent as possible. So that's the aim, and that's basically the configuration of how our team works at Du Bois.
Okay, super, thank you. Okay, we're almost there. Kathleen, you hanging in there?
Hang on.
I know, it's tough that and clean up, right? Just some quick talking points from the Young Adult Service Program at the Du Bois Center. Client-centered, trauma-informed, voluntary program. I heard employment, again. I heard meaningful lives, and then I heard also as independent as possible. You know, some pretty important talking points as we move forward to question and answer. So our final presenter before we get to question and answer, and I thank you for your patience, Kathleen, but Ms. Kathleen Calway, she is the Autism Support and Resource Specialist with the State Department of Social Services, Autism Spectrum Disorder Services. Kathleen?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for inviting me here, Chris, and to the parents in the audience. I commend you for taking the time out of your day to better educate yourself and be educated. The Department of Social Services has an autism division. We have an autism lifespan waiver. Formerly, it was housed at DDS, where I was employed for many years, first in Berthoud grade and as a transition coordinator. And then I jumped over to the Department of Social Services when the division was transferred from a legislative act in 2016. We have a lifespan waiver, and I'm not going to candy coat any of the information I'm going to give you. We have a lifespan waiver where individuals are eligible from age 3 and up to have services such as clinical behavioral supports, social skills group, job coaching, life skills, community mentor, individual goods and services, personal emergency response system, respite assistive technology, interpreter, non-medical transportation, specialized driving assessment, and living companion. We do not offer a residential component, and we do not offer housing. That being said, the division currently has a waiting list of over 1,300. We have 94 slots to this division that are fully filled, and since this is a lifespan waiver, individuals only come off the waiver when they no longer require the services or they move out of state. I've been told that perhaps this year we're going to get an additional 10 slots. That is not comfortable. What I always tell parents when they say, well, why should I even sign up for the waiver? Legislators need to know the numbers in Connecticut about these individuals that would not otherwise qualify for DVS services. The lifespan waiver works with individuals with an IQ of 70 or above, or those who do not have an intellectual disability. So parents and educators, change is going to come from you. I report to the legislators on a quarterly basis for the Autism Advisory Committee meetings. They know the numbers, but they need to hear from their constituents. They need to know the specific needs, and they need to know that funding needs to grow for this specific population. As an autism resource specialist, and I'm only one in the entire state, so I am covering from Rhode Island to New York City to Massachusetts to the ocean, where sometimes I really want to throw myself in. But I am there to meet with parents. I am there to help you connect to your community. I am there to maybe go through a door that you might not otherwise have thought you would go through together, to kind of look at different things out of the box, to connect you and your loved one to the community as they enter into the adult world. This is not an easy thing. They don't call it the transition cliff for nothing. This is not an entitlement program, so all the funding that we have falls within the existing funding parameters we get from the legislature. You know, I wish I had better news for you and I could say, yes, everybody that applies is going to come in, they're going to be assigned a case manager, the services are going to start right away. That's certainly not the case. Unlike DDS, individuals who even apply for the waiver will not be assigned a case manager until they receive a slot on the waiver. But they do have access to me. Contact information is on our website under contacts. There's also a list of resources there. There's also, individual things that you can do while you are waiting. What I do for families sometimes, when I go out and I have visits with them, we discuss their specific needs. We talk about the self-pay option, maybe utilizing SSI funding, utilizing some other types of funding. If the individual is between the ages of 18 and 21, being on Husky C, if you need those behavioral supports or some other supports such as care coordination, from 18 to 21, if you're on Husky C, you can get those services through the state plan, which is administered through Beacon Health Options. Not a lot of people know this, but at least it's something for those critical years. I also work with families, if they do decide to go the self-pay option, to actually give them an individualized list of the private providers that have been vetted from DDS and approved to provide services for our waiver. I specifically do it by the town that they're in and by the service that they're looking for. There's a lot of services out there that haven't been fully vetted. There's a lot of services that are coming on board every day, and there's a lot that you don't understand or might not even know about within your community. But it's a journey, and it's one that I'm willing to take with the families so we can put their loved ones on a path to a really great life.
Kathleen, I really appreciate you coming down, and I know it's kind of be a challenge to talk, but that's honesty. That's really what this is all about today, and I think it's information, and you need to know. We talk about, once again, I hear Kathleen talking about budgets. I hear Kathleen talking about 1,300 on a waiting list. I hear about the lifespan waiver, connecting to the community, and I also heard Kathleen kind of offer her services as a resource. And certainly I know in my time, going through a lot of the PPTs here at the high school, and we have students in these situations, not DDS eligible, more of the autism waiver, frustration on the part of parents. I think, Kathleen, I'm hearing that you are offering yourself as a resource potentially to those individuals. And again, maybe there's that day when the state legislature says we're funding all 1,300. The point is, if you're not on that wait list, because I hear it, I'm not, there's no reason for me to go on the wait list. If you're not on that wait list, it'd be so unfortunate that when those services do become available, that your son or daughter is not on that wait list to get those services. And I think it's my understanding, I think your first selectman, our first selectman, should be running for lieutenant governor. This may be a great time that our first selectman be aware of some of the challenges facing our students afflicted with autism. So anyways, that's our panel. I really appreciate it. Give them a nice round of applause. So some question and answer. You know, I'm going to say about 30 minutes or so, 45 minutes. We'll stay as long as possible. I'm going to kind of preface this in a couple of ways. First, please, with your questions, confidentiality. We are taping, we are videotaping, no specific names. Please, I ask that. Generalities are preferred. Some of the things that I would think about in terms of questions, you know, levels of support. And what I say by that is think about the level of support that your son or daughter receives through the public education system. And maybe a good question is the level of support that they're potentially facing in the adult service world. That is, I think, a huge issue, of something that you need to be aware of. Another thing, maybe what parents can do at home with your sons and daughters to kind of prepare for adult services. Maybe that's a good question or something along those lines. Also, for our teachers and educators, what school districts can do to prepare students for adult services and to access those services. Maybe you have some questions about timing, when to apply, at what point, how old. Maybe there's some questions about guardianship, conservatorship. That seems to come up an awful lot. So these are just some things that I'm thinking of as we move forward. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the panel sit. We're going to take questions one at a time. Ask your question. If it needs repeating, I will repeat it. And we'll let, if you have a question for one of the specific panel representatives, great. Or maybe open it up to the whole panel. So here we go. Open it up. Yes.
For Lewis and for DDS, you know, our kids, for those kids who are in the transition program now, which is my son, you know, we're used to a certain amount of kind of activities during the day and a time frame. Can you speak a little bit to kind of how a week might be broken up, kind of what hours can be expected to be engaged in a program, and what that might be split between, say, employment and skills and skills learning?
Our program is a 30-hour-a-week program, 9 to 3, and the balance really depends on the individual. We have some folks who are competitively employed who drop into some of our programming, and then we have some folks who spend all 30 hours in one program. It really is individualized. Once we get somebody into, let's say, our life skills program, we start working on a career plan with those folks so that there's some direction to what their focus is going to be in the near future. Those folks would probably tend to have more of a vocational week. And we try to set that up through our life skills program. Some folks are not ready to work right off the bat. And that's why our life skills program is a little different from other organizations, because you drop into an adult service provider and in an employment program, and sometimes you're just dropped into whatever work they have available. Our program is different because we understand that that age group has very specific needs that need to be addressed before some are ready for the workforce, so we tailor it that way. But overall, it's a 30-hour-a-week program, 9 to 3.
To piggyback to Lucy's comments, on our website, if you go to the top, there's an A to Z little button, and just click on Q after you do that, it brings you down to a qualified provider list. That's updated every week, 2 weeks by our Hartford office. That's a statewide list of all the providers that we have qualified for our families or individuals to tap into as resources, whether it be for day, for transportation, for respite, for whatever the case may be. It's an excellent resource. It's not a sortable list, so I apologize, it frustrates me. But when you look at that list, you'll be able to look at the service type that you're investigating for your family member and see who in your community offers that. Don't be misled by the addresses listed, because some of those providers might be in your community, but their home base might be clear across the state, or out of state for that matter. So when in doubt, you can always reach out to us and kind of tweak that list a little bit. One of the CES, Cooperative Educational Services, does an annual transition fair in March. It's a great opportunity for education professionals as well as families to go and just walk around and meet a whole bunch of providers all in one room and ask questions about the types of services they offer to your son, your daughter, your family member. It's a one-stop shop. There's about, you were there, correct?
Yeah. About 25, 30 different vendors.
25, 30 different vendors, and just in this area that commit to going on a regular basis. Louis also mentioned about 30 hours a week. Well, 30 hours a week is one type of service model. He also mentioned competitive employment. We have a lot of young men and women who are working competitively who might get 2, 3, 4, 5 hours of support a week. The rest of the time, they're on the job utilizing their natural supports that the employer offers and or the community offers. So we might have folks who are getting maybe $5,000 to $10,000 of annualized resources just for that job post to check in periodically, and they're doing fine. And we have others who are in more intense programs who are 30 hours a week, typically Monday through Friday, doing more of that community integration, maybe some volunteering, some ADL skills, daily living skill enhancements, and things like that. So it really is individualized, as Louis mentioned, and it can look completely different from your child to the child next to you, the child across the street. So working with us, working with the providers, we can build that. In our system, you can go directly to Ableist, and we contract with Ableist for your child. The money's assigned to your child. Or you can private hire. You can set it all up and self-direct, as we call it, and hire the staff, design your Monday through Friday and what you want it to look like, and you can do it that way too. So there's a lot of different options that you can utilize through our funding, whether it be directly, we fund them for your child, or you work with us and we design a plan together. So hope that answers.
Other questions? Yes.
This question from Louis. How is your service funded? Do we pay you as parents?
Primarily, it's DDS funded, but we do work with families and have a private pay option. But if your son or daughter qualifies for DDS services, they're going to provide the funding to access our services.
When you talk about 35 communities, really the kids will live there.
Our living situations?
You mentioned 34, 35 communities.
Right, those are our residential options, our living options. So we have folks who live in more traditional group homes, we have folks who live in supported living, we have some folks who live in home shares. They're all different types of living situations, and the support needs for the folks in the different models is different. So it really depends on what kind of supports they need in that setting.
When you say the meaningful jobs, what type of jobs can you give an example?
Sure, we have folks working, there's a lot of retail. We do some of that as well, but we really try to focus on what the individual wants to do. So for instance, we just started working with this young man who on the very high end has a degree in graphic arts. So we're focused on getting him something in graphic arts. So we've applied to internships, we've gotten him something with an organization that does graphic art. And so there's that example, and there are folks who just want to work in one of our businesses. We've developed several small businesses through Ableist to help train our folks on ground so that they can then take those skills and go out into the community.
So you provide from 3 to like seniors, lifelong service. But for others, so that they provide a spectrum 18, 21, 16, that's the difference.
Maybe each of you can handle that one in terms of age and eligibility and how long.
Well, with DDS, you can apply as young as 3. The youngest I've seen come through eligibility was 1.5 years old, but typically it's 3. Then we have to go through a redetermination around the age of 8, is when typically the first cognitive testing is conducted through school systems to validate their eligibility, or lifelong. If you're eligible for DDS services, it's pretty much going to be lifelong until you choose to exit our system. And we have folks who voluntarily say, I don't want it, you're helping me more, and sign paperwork and say, here you go. We have people who leave, and then obviously life's natural path of just passing away. So those typically are the 3 where people exit our system. So we are lifelong, and we are one of the primary funders for agencies like Ableist. So we rely on the state budget to then issue to your son, your daughter, your son, your daughter, to then go shopping and using that list I referenced, that qualified provider list, to go buy the services that would address the current needs. So we work collaboratively. Your family member is the core, and then you're working with us to secure the dollars, and then you can go shopping, and we guide you along that process. Sean's agency has a little bit different parameters.
Yep.
And
So when I said 16 to 21, that's just level up. When it's 16 to 21, or when they take their diploma for level up purposes. That means BRS doesn't stop working with them, it's just they're not eligible for the transition, the pre-employment transition services anymore that I talked about. When they do graduate, whether it's at 21, they receive their diploma senior year, that's when we start transitioning them into our adult services. Adult services ranges from 16 all the way to 80. But as Brian said, we're more of a short-term agency. When someone is competitively employed in a job, they've met those skillful milestones and measurable skill gains, that's when we look to close out their case. And as I said, it's not a one and done. You can always come back and reapply, or kind of as Lewis said, if he may be starting with some of the services and he may contact us and say, I think this person is ready for employment now. They can be referred that way as well, and that has happened a lot.
How about the voice center, the time limited,
Oh,
the
well, again,
youth services versus maybe your adult services?
The young adult services, and again, the kind of window is 18 to 25. But if someone continues to need Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services programming, after that, they would transition into one of the adult outpatient programs. And they might transition into that even before they reach the age of 25, if they have kind of reached all of the goals and achievements that they were striving for in the young adult service program. So one can continue to receive services from DEMAS as long as needed. There's no end limit. Only the young adult service program is time limited.
Kathleen?
And for the autism waiver, it's age 3 and up. DDS currently determines the eligibility for the autism waiver, so the application is the same one that DDS uses, and it goes to central office at DDS, but it's age 3 right through the lifespan.
So in order to get on your waiting list, we just apply to DDS.
So let's talk about that for a second. Can we just, how that works?
So when you go back to the eligibility screen when I was talking, that third option where you'd be applying for somebody who has autism and no intellectual disability, that would provide you with the information about the application and such. But if you clicked on the link that I did, which was for applying with somebody with intellectual disability, the application's right there. You just print it, you're filling out the same exact application, you're providing the same exact materials, with the exception that you want to ensure that you're including the test on autism, the CARS or the ADOS clinical test for that particular diagnosis, okay? Because you don't want to be determined ineligible for ID, intellectual disability, when you're intending on applying for autism, because then you don't meet the criteria for that. So make sure you have that particular test. Now, if your son or daughter or family member has autism, and you're unsure if those cognitive test scores are going to go either way after they review it, include everything. Include all the stuff that you need for the cognitive. Include the autism clinical cognitive test. Everything. And let our staff at Hartford sift through it and make an appropriate decision as to which side. Is it autism services or is it DDS's side that would be most appropriate?
And like Brian was saying too, if the child is under the age of 8 and they are determined to be eligible, they'll go back to the DDS helpline up until the age of 8 when they get redetermined, and whether that IQ is a 70 or above or a 69 or below.
So the bottom line is DDS eligibility unit does all the eligibility for DDS and for the autism waiver program or the autism program through DSS.
As we speak on April 20th.
As of today.
As of today.
As of today.
Somebody might have a right or
Now, let me ask this question, and this comes up. Let's say we have a situation, testing, it's kind of borderline, maybe autism, maybe ID, we're not sure, 70 IQ, 71, 72, the adaptives are kind of in the middle. What would you recommend to a family in that situation?
Apply.
Apply.
Yes.
Apply. Let our psychologists in Hartford make a determination.
So should we be fretting over here like we need to make a decision? We need to say this student is ID or this student is autistic.
An important thing to remember is they're looking at the developmental period. So if you have somebody that's going to be reaching age 18, you want to have the most recent evaluation you can have before that individual hits age 18.
Okay. So when in doubt, apply. Apply.
Again, you have appeal rates, so if you're not satisfied with the decision, you might be approved for autism services and disagree with that and appeal and say, my son or daughter has the deficits and should be under the ID side. We've had families appeal that. We've had them appeal the other way. They've been denied both sides and they appeal the decision in general. So there's appeal rights if you're not satisfied with
And
the
the appeal runs through the health agencies. So.
Yep.
For example, if the kid is able to go to college with support, and after he graduates from college, he is supervised service with one job.
So the question
But
is,
then he's like 20.
so the question is, a student attends college and still, will they be eligible for services after completion of college?
It would be, if they're eligible for DDS services, we are planning for them. If he or she chooses to go to some collegiate program, that is their choice. We do not fund that. We cannot fund that. It's not permissible.
But it's after the college, do you still provide service to help him?
Based on what resources are available and what their needs are, then we can look at doing appropriate service referrals for that. So, if your son or daughter is exiting in June, I highly encourage you use the resources that we've been planning for and can allocate at that time. No matter if it's minimal or all of it. Because if you don't use it, those get recycled and go to another student that we weren't aware of who might have just came through eligibility in May. And then you're going to be vying for resources just like anybody else 4 or 5 years down the road. So it's very important to work with us to design an individualized plan that addressing your son or daughter family members' needs using the resources we have access to right then and there as a graduate.
Sir? Well, and then you.
A question to Witness. Could you speak to a little bit about your approach to the vocational readiness skills? Are they provided off-site or at the job site? I think one of the things I've heard is that students remain off-site and they're getting ready for skills but jobs don't exist. And the best way to learn is to be on the job.
Right.
So where do those job skills take place? Where does those career readiness, job readiness skills take place?
The best place is on the job, but we do both. We do both. Some folks need a little bit more hand-holding, need a little bit more support, so we can do that in-house. But really, you learn the job on the job, and we support with our job coaching at the job site. We work very closely with employers to communicate what deficits there are, what skills there are, and to make sure that we're addressing that appropriately. But yeah, you learn best at a job site.
Just a following question to DBS. You mentioned about the parent-directed model. Could parents collaborate in a way or is it really parent by parent? Or in other words, 2-3 parents with similar issues can get together and create.
So if 2 or 3 parents have similar issues, can they get together and pull funding together to plan a program?
Or instructional programs.
Or instructional program?
I'll be honest with you, we've seen that happen with residential services. I haven't seen that happen specifically with a day service. The exception to that statement is we've had some families design a business where it might be a baking business or dog biscuit business. We have one family who designed a farm stand because they own a farm, so they designed a business opportunity for their family member with disabilities to have their own operational farm stand, and they did the whole growing through the harvesting to the selling. So there are opportunities for families to kind of pull back their resources together, their ideas together, and it might be developing a business, or it might be developing a program where you're self-directing, and somehow or another there's interaction during that Monday through Friday, or they're doing a similar activity, so it's not just the staff and the individual always. It might be a staff person with multiple peers doing an activity or a work program. So there's a lot of different creative options out there.
So if I can ask, going back a few years, there was a time when I think DDS had what was called self-determination funding or self-determination program. Is that something that is still out there and still available to families?
Yes, it is, Christopher.
Okay.
Not
Can
funding.
you explain that a little bit? It's what?
It's not specific funding for that, but it's
Okay.
a program model where folks can self-direct the resources that have been assigned to them. So that is still alive. We have a supervisor who's a director and a supervisor and case managers who are in that division in all 3 regions. So it is alive and well, I can assure you that.
Questions?
You had, all of you are from different programs and services. Are all of your services means tested, meaning that you need to be on Husky C to access the funding stream from each of your services? Because so the 4 of you from the state agencies, and obviously able to be part of DDS, but which of your programs are means tested?
For us, as I talked about, it's really looking at the disability, not the Medicaid, not that type of those things. For us, we look at the testing that either the school provides or sometimes we do outside testing to get a better understanding of the individual's needs before we look at the functional limitations. Because we want to see the disability first and then look at how those functional limitations. For a specific learning disability, we look at a 22-point discrepancy, the 22-point discrepancy model. And then, we look at the outside resources of someone who's seen a psychologist or who is identified as intellectually disabled. We get information from DDS that will help qualify them. In terms of like Medicaid for us, nothing like that.
For DDS, all right, without trying to draw massive confusion, for eligibility purposes, no. You can be eligible for DDS services. Now let me put the asterisk. To access like our family grant program, which I currently still oversee, it's not means test. We ask questions about household family income and assets. Does it apply to how I make decisions about the grants going out the door? No. At age 18, your family member is their own legal adult in the state of Connecticut, regardless of their functioning level. That's why I mentioned guardianship or conservatorship is that appropriate? That's a decision made by the family.
Can you just repeat that?
At age 18, they are their own legal adult. They are the decision maker. You're no longer a parent of minor. What that does, though, is now your household income and assets no longer apply when they are applying for state and federal benefits. Okay, so with that said, we encourage on our side of the DDS world is to entertain the guardianship and/or conservatorship, depending on what's appropriate, prior to 18, because you can apply for guardianship 180 days prior to the 18th birthday. Still a parent of a minor, that decree does not go into effect until the 18th birthday. With the conservatorship or conservatorship, however you want to pronounce it, apple, potato, that you cannot apply prior to the 18th birthday. The 18th birthday is the earliest you can apply for that. Both done through probate court. You can then apply for Social Security benefits, supplemental security income, SSI at 18. You can then apply for Medicaid. We're looking for the Husky C and specific under Medicaid. You do it in that order because that little court decree paperwork that you have to get from probate, Social Security wants to see it. It's their way of deflecting fraud. People just applying for benefits over somebody with a disability and them not knowing about it. And then they're going to want to look at it from our colleagues at DSS who do the Medicaid, they're going to want to copy that as well. We, as DDS, cannot assign an individual money for an employment program, a day program, or residential unless they have the Medicaid. Okay, so it's not means tested per se, but we use the Medicaid insurance to put them on our waiver programs, to which we're getting 50 cents of every dollar back through the federal government for our services. So if your son or daughter's day program costs $40,000 a year, we're getting, if at full utilization, we're getting 20 of that 40 back through reimbursements using the Medicaid ID number. Our case management staff can generate income through their contact and the work they do with each and every one of the youth in our system. They can generate enough revenue to justify their annual income or their annual salaries. if they bill appropriately for their supports and services. So we're trying to be as self-sufficient as possible, so that way it doesn't look as, beneficial to cut our services in the legislative eyes. But all the dollars that come back in through the revenue mechanism, that stream, come in through the general fund. It doesn't come right back to us. But we are proving efficiencies through the billing, through the utilization of the services by the folks we support and our own staff. So it's not means tested, but we do require that in order for us to release dollars. It's actually a state law. I can't remember the exact public act.
Davis?
For the most part, when folks have private insurance, we refer them to other providers because they have more options. And we're there for the people who have fewer options. There may be some exception to that for young adults who might be on parents' insurance. Frankly, most of the young adults coming to us are on Husky, but there may be some exception if they're on parents' insurance still, but then moving off of it to Husky. For the most part, though, Demas does serve those who have state insurance or are uninsured, but not the folks who have more options and resources.
DSS?
To be eligible for the autism waiver, you do not have to have Medicaid Husky C, but to get the slot, you do have to have Husky C. And just reiterating what Brian said about the state recouping 50 cents on every job. They do not have to have Husky C to talk to me or for me to come out and do a visit. But again, for those kids from 18 to 21, if they want to access those additional services through Beacon, they need to have that Husky C.
Questions? Couple more. Yes?
Residential supports, are there any?
Residential supports, are there any?
Yes. Is there residential funding for those supports?
Realistically
Limited.
speaking.
There are, as Lewis mentioned, there's a variety of different residential options out there.
Each of those models, if I were to call Lewis for your office tomorrow morning and simply ask my son,
Our,
what happens?
our funding currently is going towards emergencies. So if your family situation, your son's situation was defined by our department as being an emergency, that would allow us to allocate resources for residential services. We don't have a pot of gold, sadly enough, to say, oh, we need that, perfect, here you go. You need that, perfect. Our residential budget is extremely tight. And we have an average of about 20 to 30 emergencies per region at a given time. So, and some of those could be a mere $15,000 to enhance current situation, or those might be a $200,000 to $300,000 group home situation based on the situation, what they're presenting with. Some of our emergencies, unfortunately, we have no control over. We find out about them yesterday. I had to emergency place 3 people last week because of abuse and neglect situations. I had one get released from corrections that there was no plan for. So there's certain things that we don't have no idea are coming. But I assure you, if God forbid an emergency arose, we do our very best with that family to identify an appropriate setting. And if there's no family, then we do our best to work with our provider network, like Lewis, enable us to get a temporary situation that the person's safe, we know they're not going to be in harm's way, and then we work through the next couple weeks to find something more permanent.
But there's no natural sort of transition, if you will, or rollout that one can anticipate, that one can plan for.
Well, there's a couple options, and Lewis mentioned shared living. Shared living is a new concept that's rolling out amongst the state, but you as families have opportunities to do some planning yourselves, which is afforded under the ABLE Act. That affords families to squirrel away some money to purchase services and supports that state and federal government might not be able to do. There's other planning that families have done where they don't rely on state agencies. DDS or DEMIS or DSS shouldn't be the only people at the table. There can be a collaboration amongst community entities, non-for-profits.
Families working together.
And families work, yep. Families providing natural supports and just asking, hey, we just need this for this person and this for this person, and that decreases. Assistive technology, is another huge thing that we're promoting, where it decreases the need for a physical staff person to be on site. You might be doing Skyping, you might be doing other safety mechanisms between window alarms, door alarms, stove shutoffs. There's a whole bunch of different technology out there that we're looking into, and we have people who are using and have decreased their reliance on the need for physical staff to be present, and it's significantly less cost, which allows us to do more of that versus one person at this cost. So there's a lot we can do. It's just a matter of let's connect, have a conversation, and kind of plan more around that. I can't cut you a check. I don't have that authority. As much as I would love to be able to do that.
In fact, I have heard through third parties where I hand Lewis a house tomorrow, that there's no guarantee that it's going to be staffed by anybody.
You can hand him a house, go right ahead. But
So even if I were
but there's
to
no
write a check,
guarantee your son or daughter would end up in that house. That's the guarantee out there.
Or any kind of more natural evolution of, if you go from A to B, you will eventually get to C. That's what I'm looking for, that I don't seem to find that path.
The challenge is the cost and cost of running a group home in Connecticut on average is about $120,000 a year.
Right.
On
Per
top of
person.
Per person.
I would imagine that's probably a national average.
That's a New York
higher.
average. National's around 90.
Yeah.
Bank is higher.
Yeah.
But we're getting with it. Those large congregate settings we're decreasing the developments on that as much as we possibly can. And it's going more individualized into a shared situation, supported living, or smaller 2 or 3 person, what we call CRSs, continuous residential support options, will still offer a 24-hour staffing structure. So the days of big units of 10, 15 people on them, or cottages that had 20 or 30 in them, or group homes that when I started way back, it was 6 or 8 people in a house. Those days are over. They're getting smaller, 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 more realistic. I don't know about you, I don't want to live with 6 or 8 people, let alone not in family. I don't want to do that.
No, but I wouldn't want my
but
son's
it's
world
not
to
natural.
go from, I wouldn't want my son's world to go from black to white without some gray.
Agreed. And that's where planning with any one of our agencies comes into play, is outlining that. And if you went on our website, Life Course is a huge thing that we're promoting. And Kathy would agree with that as well as Lewis and the others. But that gives you an opportunity to help your family member articulate what they want for their life, whether it be next year or 5 years or 15 or 30. You then have a say and a vision for them as well. And you get everybody around that support team that you have around them, and you identify who else you need to bring to that table. As I say, it's not a dinner party between us, our agency, and your family. It's a dinner party of much larger magnitude that we need to start looking at. Who can come to that table? What can they provide? Is there a cost, or is it natural? Is it extended family? Is it faith-based organization? So I mean, there's a lot of different things. That planning is going to help articulate what you want, what you desire for your son or your daughter when you're no longer able to provide the care.
So it's a little bit, the life planning is a little bit of the person-centered planning, a little bit of the maps and the path. It's kind of the DDS answer to that, and it's a much larger endeavor, but it's a great planning tool that they have on their website. A couple of more questions, and then we're going to kind of close it around 3:30. It's been a long afternoon. Anyone else? Yes.
Just a question for Sean about the level of, what would be like an example of a case? Like, would it be, a 17-year-old high school student, you do an assessment, they are shadowed, like, so what would be like a successful example?
We've had a lot of different, as everyone has said here, it's very individualized.
Right.
We said the program is 16 to 21. But we would say, when is the student ready for the services as well? Are they going to benefit at 16, or do they need some more services from the school first before they come to us? And so, an individual case for like a job shadow. We've had a couple students go here to visit auto mechanic place, and then what's happening, then I come back once a month and, you know, talk to them about that. So we contract to Goodwill, and Goodwill does all that, and then they come back and talk to me to see, is it a realistic job goal for them? What did they learn? You know, what steps do they need to get there? You know, and that's kind of my role, is overseeing it and then helping them break down piece by piece of what, you know, what they need to get to that type of job, and even if it is realistic. And then in the summers we have, we work with employers, entry-level type positions. I always like to say the job shadowing and informational interviewing that I talked about is more career focused, and then the jobs in the summer, if available, are more like entry-level type positions. Just to build, you know, as everyone here said, to build those independent skills, to have them get some work experience. You know, just like a lot of us, you know, we all have started with some type of entry-level position, and that's kind of the purpose of our summer programs if we do have them available every year.
But I think, Sean, you're looking for a referral of the student of the year of their graduation. To start work, yes? Okay, so if they're graduating as a senior, we're gonna make that referral the end of their junior year.
Yes, end of the junior year, because we want to get them started early. But as Chris was saying, if we know a student, if you know, you guys have your PPT meetings and, you know, 18 to 21-year-old program is talked about all the time at those meetings, we would, you know, I would review the case and say, okay, let's hold off until the first year of the 18 to 21-year-old program. We have some time. What can the school be doing first to build some of those skills, and then that first year of the program, we look towards having them apply. But we, you know, we always say end of the junior year, beginning of the junior year, and then we really like to say that, you know, prioritizing, like I said, if we know someone is graduating at senior year, we want the referrals first semester of junior year. But if we know someone is, you know, graduating down the road, we say either the first year or the second semester of their senior year.
So I have a couple of things I just want each of you to cover before we leave today. The first thing is kind of to piggyback on the jobs. I heard employment in almost every presentation. You know, we here at the high school in our 18 to 21-year-old program, we do a lot of, you know, employment, et cetera, job searching. How specific, how creative, how flexible are all of you in terms of finding those jobs that really match the passion and the abilities of specific students? Such as many of our students, maybe students on the spectrum, they have specific interests. You know, maybe it's STEM, maybe it's a video game, maybe it's something along those lines. How much leeway, how much success do you have in terms of trying to meet those needs, those interests of those students?
You know, in terms of BRS purposes, we really do try our best to make it as customized and individualized as possible. You know, but at the same time, you know, we may start off with an entry-level position, but building that way up to something that they're really interested in. Because we're trying to, our agency has really shifted from just getting a job. Our agency has shifted to the model of guiding the person through college, if applicable. Not everyone is appropriate for college, but guiding them through college to help them make those measurable skill gains. So, you know, I talked about, you know, getting a job, but it's really making those measurable skill gains to get the job. So we really do work with them as much as possible. We put them out on assessments to see what type of work they can do. On-the-job trainings are a real big thing for us, and that's very customized to what individuals' strengths, individuals' interests. We have a lot. We have a variety.
Okay. Anyone else?
DDS world, we rely on them.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's their job.
Yep.
No, but in all seriousness, we do rely heavily on doors to get that component done, and then they rely on us to sustain that with the job coaching. However, with that said, there's a lot of youth who go through doors and it's determined they don't meet their criteria. But that doesn't stop the opportunity in our system to continue that employment discussion and doing the customized employment, working with our vendors, career plans and things along those lines. So even though he or she might not be eligible for DOORS BRS, they still can get a job. They can still get meaningful employment in the community just through different means, which we would fully support working with our vendors through.
And like I said before, that may happen, they may not be ready when they leave here, the level up, we may say, you know, at the end, we don't really think that the person can benefit from adult services getting the job right now, but then they go to, you know, Lewis's program, and then Lewis says they made tremendous strides. I think it's time to come back to us to kind of evaluate to see what type of job they can do now. So it's not like I keep saying, it's not a one and done for us. You know, we kind of, it's the team approach again, as you know, Brian was really saying before.
And we've actually hired some of our own consumers, individuals who are eligible for our services, who are also state employees for our agency. So they're at what we classify as general worker roles, where they might be working in some of our offices doing office clerk type of assistance. And then we also have self-advocates. We have a number of positions, self-advocates statewide, and they're charged with doing a lot of trainings, legislative actions, policy changes. They meet with our commissioner quite regularly. They maintain our self-advocate website on our website. That's all them. You can't post a single thing to their website without going through all of that. So there's a lot of employment opportunities that we offer, not as much as I would love to see, but that we do offer as an agency to those we actually support. So, and they're all paid minimum wage or greater. They get the benefits as every part-time employee would. So they're actually on payroll just as much as they can support.
I'm going to go back to your question because I have a good example of the team approach. A couple years ago, I worked with a student who had a real high interest in childcare. School did a great job of having him do some volunteer experience. We worked with him on certain, self-advocacy skills, self-determination skills, while the school was doing the hands-on work with him, the volunteer work. And from all the skills that he learned, when we transitioned him into adult services, I made the recommendation to the adult counselor that we think that he could continue making strides and go to training for childcare. So with our adult services now, he is being guided through a childcare program to get a certification in that so that he can work. So right now, he's actually taking his test to get certified. So that's kind of an example of the team approach, going one by one, and how each agency can kind of help.
Just one real quick point. It starts as young as 3 to start thinking about future. As young as 3, when you're looking at IEPs, how is that going to go? The attitude over the years and increase independence, safety skills, employability, everything. That tool, that document, is a foundation by which you can work off of. It starts as young as in elementary school. And when I started out, I was volunteering in Special Olympics many years ago. I've been in the field for 25 years or more. Who knew I was going to land there, but my initial engagement working with the folks that I currently work with and for started as young as 6, 7, 8 years of age. So you never know, those life experiences might be what DOORS uses down the road, or we use down the road from an employment standpoint. But those skill sets, as small as they might be in those IEP goals, as young as elementary school, you got to look at it when they're leaving at 21. How is that going to maximize their independence? Is that going to make that employee? How are we going to build each and every planning document?
So
And even
go ahead.
Oh, we got the show, Chris.
Yeah.
All right,
So
you're just taking off.
Continuing that conversation, it's starts at home. What type of chores are they doing to build some of those responsibilities? Learning how to do their laundry, taking out the trash. Those are all building those skills, as Brian's kind of talking about. to meet those goals.
Fine voter.
Yes.
So actually, I was interrupting you and I apologize, but that is exactly what I was going to say to kind of close things up today. What is it that school districts, what is it that parents can be doing to help with the transition process and ultimately helping their son and daughters to be as independent as they possibly can be? And I would really like each of you just to spend a minute to talk about that. What can school districts, what can parents be doing to help facilitate that process, to access these wonderful services that you all provide?
Let's start with Kathy.
Kathy.
Well, just like what we said, number one, let them be independent. Let them be independent at home, let them be independent in school. Think out of the box. Think creatively. Look at their special interests. Look at the things that they love to do. There's not a wrong door to go through. Don't ever let anybody tell you there is.
Luis?
Varied opportunities in multiple settings for work. Expose your child to as many jobs in different settings as you possibly can. Something's going to trigger, something, and they're going to love it, and an organization like Ableist can follow up with that. Get your kids out in the community. Our program model is largely community-based. They're going to be on their feet in the community, working, volunteering, going to classes, many different things. That's our model. That's really the way to prepare these kids. We want to get them out in the community. We want to get them exposure in their own neighborhoods, using the vendors, using the supermarket, using the library, using the gyms. It helps us, with service provision if they come with those skills.
Coming a little bit more from a clinical perspective, but still sort of feeding into the same objectives, I would say that the kind of most significant things one can do for the child is validation, empathic listening, something that all of that builds their sense of self, where they are. And it doesn't mean you sort of validate a bad behavior, but you give them the opportunity to express their feeling and leave the space for the feeling and validate that they have it, not that they shouldn't. Create consistency and predictability. That creates the safety that they can relax and grow and be themselves and discover themselves. I've always said, God, if I had only one sort of interpersonal thing to take to a desert island, one clinical skill, that would be it.
They're their own individual. You gotta meet them where they're at. You gotta maybe do extra hand holding, but as much as you can do to do the same you would do for any other student, any other child, whether they have a disability or not. Challenge them to do the same exact things. It might take you 4 months or 6 months longer to teach them how to do laundry than a non-disabled child. Don't give up. Let them be as independent as possible. As Lewis indicated, community. Your communities have an immense amount of support with them, depending on where you live. Use them. They're wonderful resources. Building those relationships builds safety skills, builds communication skills, builds interpersonal skills. Every little exposure that you give your family member, they're building a skill set, whether you see it or not, that we can all tap into down the road, developing a plan or looking at a work program or a residential service. So let them succeed, let them fail, just like you would whether they didn't have a disability, and challenge them. You're a team. It's not us versus them. Okay? You're a family. You have a young man, a young woman who has special needs. Use the team around you. Use the school. They have wonderful resources. Use us as state agencies or private providers. We have resources. We might not have the bank accounts, but we have people who have been in these jobs for many years and are a wealth of knowledge, like Kathy. The one Kathy of all Connecticut. You got down here in Greenwich for that. We're committed. We just need everybody to be as committed around your family member. And it starts at home. It really does start at home. So whatever we can do to help you do that work, family grants, I talked about that earlier. It's an opportunity to help challenge your family member so that they can increase their independence. They succeed in school, they succeed in their community, they succeed at work, and they succeed living independently, possibly, or with a friend. Who knows?
Just to echo what Brian said, it's really letting them fail, building themselves up. Having them do the laundry a couple times. If they're having difficulty with it, then like Brian said, then come back, but let them do it on their own first. Let them fail and build themselves up, because that's what work's all about, I think that's a big mindset, and like I said before, just the responsibility starts at home, building those skills. I think the most important thing is Lewis said, getting in the community to volunteer, getting them out to talk to people. Those build the social skills, the cognitive skills. Just different environments help the individuals out. Some people thrive in other. Some people thrive in school, some people don't. But some people thrive in the community. So it's just giving them the opportunities to go out and do something. And then Brian and Lewis said, using us as resources to help be able to provide those opportunities and resources to help.
Okay, I'm just going to say thank you. Thank you, everyone. I want to say this has been a wonderful turnout. We never know when we do something like this, what kind of turnout we're going to have from staff and or parents. We've had over 50 people attend today. This is wonderful. This really gives me energy to want to do more of these in the future. I really, really, really want to thank our panel. Let's give them a hand. They came from far and wide today throughout the, well, you can, and I really mean this, and we've had representation today from agencies that we haven't seen here in Greenwich. So I truly, truly appreciate them coming down and providing their expertise. Their resources, they're here. They've given you information. Please think about it. At least leave today with your mind kind of thinking about transition and the future. And then just the last thing that I want to say, a couple of thank yous. I want to thank Celeste for helping in the booth. I want to thank Jason for his wonderful videography. Thank you. And again, really, parents, it's about independence. And we don't know agency-wise and service-wise where things are going to be at in 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years. The more independent your son or daughter is, the better they're going to be able to access whatever those services are down there in 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And their life is going to be that much more meaningful. Keep that in mind as we plan forward. School districts keep that in mind as we plan forward. Thank you all. Have a great day. If staff can sign in, there's